There's no justice for the working man, and nothing comes for free to us working men. So much corruption from the wicked man.
Thank you today, union brothers and sisters, allies and friends, for joining us today for the Justice for East Palestine Residents and Workers panel discussion on this first year anniversary of the Norfolk Southern Freight Train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. My name is Penny Logsdon, and I'm a proud member of the International Painters and Allied Trades Public Professional Maintenance Employees Local 2003. I serve as president of the Lee County Labor Chapter. When Brother Jeff Kurtz, BLET Local 391 member, brought the opportunity to collaborate with Steve Zeltzer to organize a national campaign with goals of bringing the story and struggles of the residents and workers of East Palestine, Ohio, to the attention of all union members and allies across the nation, and demand that President Biden issue a major disaster declaration for health care for all victims under the Stafford Act we were all in. It is incredible that it has been a full year since the Norfolk Southern Freight Train derailment, and the residents and workers are still struggling and left with many unanswered issues, including lack of accessible and funded healthcare coverage. February 3rd, 2023, a Norfolk Southern Freight train derails, and chemicals including vinyl chloride, a known cancer-causing chemical, along with other dangerous chemicals, were released into the air, ground, and waterways. Today, we will learn from outstanding panel speakers about the consequences the residents and workers are facing, how this catastrophic derailment causing issues have been addressed by the Norfolk Southern Railroad CEOs, EPA, the U.S. Senate, the National Transportation Safety Board, and others. Today, we are letting our union brothers and sisters know that they are not alone nor forgotten. Through our union brothers and sisters' solidarity, we will demand justice and dignity. We will bring the solution to the forefront, just as our union brothers and sisters always do, and we will not quit until our work in East Palestine, Ohio is complete. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce my co-host, Steve Zeltzer. He is a longtime labor community activist and leader in the fight for justice. He is the producer of Worker Week Radio and Pacifica.
Thank you, Penny, and thanks for really being an important part of helping to bring this movement together and of working people, union, non-union, all working people and their families to fight for justice. That's what we're really talking about. And as you said, I've been a labor journalist for decades on radio and TV. I do documentaries on Halfway to Hell, the workers and unions that built the Golden Gate Bridge. Actually, I did a document with Danny Glover who did the narration on it. So I've been covering the issue of health and safety, injured workers, workers' comp, workers fighting for health care in this country, and covering as well the disaster, man-made catastrophe in East Palestine. And I think that the lesson of this struggle, one of the lessons, is that we really don't have any real regulatory oversight and protection. And these agencies, EPA and OSHA and Department of Transportation, that should be doing the inspections, that should be protecting us, have failed or been captured by the very companies they're supposed to regulate. That's been my experience. But when I found out that, and we'll have some of Chris Albright, were some of the workers there, community people, were not getting health care. I believe that we need to find a way to get health care to them. It's an issue, a human rights issue. It's not only a resident or worker issue, it's a human rights issue. So we found out about this Stafford Act and the fact that it can be used to declare an area a mass casualty incident. And under that act, everyone, the residents and workers in the community will get health care. And if we can do that, I think that that's an important thing. So that's really the focus of our committee, which is called Justice for East Palestine Residents and Workers. And in order to do that, we need a united front. We need to bring working people together, community people, residents, and the labor movement as a whole. And we found out a few days ago that President Biden will be coming after a year. He's going to be coming to East Palestine. So we feel that this is an opportunity for us to really put the heat on to get him to declare East Palestine a emergency mass casualty site when he arrives in East Palestine, and let people know that they're going to be able to get health care. I mean, I have interviewed many workers, their families, and the most frightening thing is if you're sick and you're ill, your kids are ill, and you don't have health care. That's a tremendous stressful thing, and it's something we have to fight for. Everyone should have health care as a human right, but I think if we can start with East Palestine and get health care for the residents, community, and workers, that would be a big step forward in my mind. So without further ado, we can introduce our guests, our panelists, and the first one is Chris Albright. Chris is a member of LIUNU 1058 and is a resident of East Palestine, a half mile from the accident. And also he was a pipeline worker, and he and his family have been contaminated, and he's fighting to protect them and protect the other people in the community. So welcome, Chris.
I'm definitely glad to be here, and I definitely applaud everybody for joining this. Me personally, after the train derailment, I got diagnosed with congestive heart failure, which turned into severe heart failure. Basically, my heart grew to almost double the size and was barely pumping any blood. From that point on, I have been unable to work. Being that I've been unable to work, I've lost my health benefits. With the heart condition I have right now, the medications I have to take, one of them, I'm taking like 10 different ones. One of them is over $2,700 for just one. I have no income and I have no health benefits now. My wife has developed high blood pressure. My one daughter's been getting nosebleeds. My other daughter had gotten rashes before. We don't know what's going to happen and how we're going to be able to pay for things. We're scratching right now just to pay bills, let alone whenever I have to have any kind of my medication refilled. We don't know what we're going to do. And this was all through no fault of our own. This was something that was a complete overlook on safety regulations that should have never happened, and nothing's been done about it. And it can happen anywhere else in this world at any time. But because of that, like I said, I have no health care benefits right now. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what happens when my medications run out or if I were to get sick again. And since I've had this heart condition, I've been put in the hospital twice now. Last time was on Christmas Day, and I went into critical care. So, you know, things can happen at any time, and I have no idea how we're going to get through all this. You know, so I'm hoping that everybody listening and watching can definitely help and understand and have some sympathy and some compassion for fellow workers, fellow people, and we can get President Biden here to make this a mass casualty site and get us healthcare.
Thank you very much, Chris. And one of the issues that we've faced in this country is getting coverage of these stories. I was looking at CBS, some of the reports of the news on the 1-year anniversary, and not one of them that I saw talked about the residents fight for health care. And Chris is not the only one. That residents are losing their health care because in this country, you have to work mostly to get benefits, to get health care. So this is an issue for all working people. And I think we have to make the media pay attention to this about healthcare. And one of the people that can do this is Steve Mellon, who is a reporter, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and he went on strike against just for a contract for basic rights. And he is now a reporter for the Pittsburgh Union Progress, PUP, they call it. And he's been covering it, and he's written some very good stories and spent time doing the story. So welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. It's interesting, Chris, to hear you talk about your healthcare concerns, and that's an issue all over the place. When we first walked out on strike in October, on October 14th, 2023, I got a phone call right before the strike, right before we took the strike vote, and it was the president of our local, and he said, "Steve, we need for you to chair our health and welfare committee." And I'm like, "What the hell does that mean?" He said, "You just need to make sure everybody has health care." And I said, "No big deal." I spent the next 3 months making sure people had their health, had health care. And you're talking about people who, some of our striking members had pretty serious health issues. This is a big deal in this country, in not having adequate, decent health care. It's especially acute, this issue is in instances like East Palestine. You add this, Chris can speak about this much more eloquently than I can. I come in as somebody from the outside. I try to get there, every couple of weeks, sometimes a couple of times a week if I can. And what I see are people who are suffering real health consequences from this. All those things that Chris described, people, everything from, the bloody noses, the crushing headaches, the coughs, the rashes, all those things, and many others. And, there's no clear answers. There's just way too many unknowns here for folks. Some people feel like their bodies are a ticking time bomb. It's like, what did I ingest during that time? What am I continuing to ingest that's in here? What compounds am I breathing in? Am I absorbing? And am I going to get sick in a year? Am I going to get sick in 5 years, 10 years? Are my kids going to get sick? What's my responsibility as a parent, as a spouse? Do I stay? Do I take this huge financial burden of taking out another mortgage if I can and moving out? These are terrible decisions for people to have to make. And this is through no fault of their own. As Chris said, nobody asked for this. They were enjoying a leisurely Friday evening when in an instant, everything changed for these folks. In addition to all these very real health issues that people are facing, we have, the economic consequences of this. There's I keep hearing that there's a lot of division within the community. So, the sense of community has kind of collapsed. I saw this happen in the Mon Valley in the 1980s when the steel mills collapsed. These people, they saw all the institutions, the churches, the social clubs, the friendships fall apart. So there was a sense of isolation. And then you have some people suffering very real PTSD from what they experienced in that day and the succeeding days after the derailment, when they had that huge that vent and burn process. This is an incredibly complex story. It cannot be, one of the reasons I like to go back to it over and over again is this is not a story that can be told in a 2-minute TV take. There's a lot going on here. A lot of people are dealing with a lot of issues as a result of what happened at 8:54 on February 3rd of last year. And I think anything we can do as workers, fellow workers, as organized labor, to ease some of this burden. First of all, I think it's our duty as fellow workers, as fellow human beings with empathy, to try to help people where we can. We're in a unique position because we are organized. We know how to bring people together. We're all organizers. And I think, this is a moment for labor. We just had the summer of strike, where labor got a lot of attention. This is a way for us to show that we know how to look beyond our own self-interest and to reach out to other workers and to do something very real, very concrete to help ease some of the burden that these folks in East Palestine are having to face.
Yeah, I want to thank you very much, Steve, and everyone should go to the Pittsburgh Press Union Progress, PUP, and look at his articles. And they, despite having being on a shoestring, they're still covering the story. And we're going to try to get the labor movement to support that strike newspaper so people can get the real stories out. So our next speaker is Charlie Wishman. He's president of Iowa Federation of Labor, AFL-CIO. Is a member of the American Federation of Teachers, Local 716, and with Machinists Local 254. Welcome, Charlie.
Thank you very much, Steve. First of all, brother Chris, just know that the labor movement across the country have been thinking about you and your community, and all the members there, everyone who's been affected. Just because you don't hear about it on the news as much as you did. It's top of mind for so many folks, and I want to give hats off to the Lee County labor chapter, and like Carrie Duncan, who kind of floats in between Des Moines Henry and Lee and all over Southeast Iowa, but they are a small but mighty group that has been really working on a lot of these issues that doesn't just affect Iowans. This is a national issue, and the reason why I say it's so much bigger. I know we're talking about rail, but this is so much bigger when it comes to health and safety. I think that if we could have taken, I mean, there's plenty of lessons to take away from the pandemic, but especially after watching what I sometimes refer to as the meatpacking plant horror show that went across the Midwest here during 2020, excuse me, and during the pandemic. I think that one of the things that we needed to learn from that, and short discussion before this, is that community health and safety and worker health and safety are inseparable. What happens at work doesn't necessarily, the health problems, workplace safety problems that happen at the job site, at whatever your job is, whatever your work is, it doesn't stay there. It affects the entire community. And what is so disgusting to so many of us about all of this, so when it comes down to it, the common thread that goes through, whether it's Norfolk Southern or any of the rail companies, or whether we're talking about, say, Tyson in the meatpacking example that I'm using here right now. Pardon me, my dog's chasing the cat. It's corporate greed. And that's what it all comes down to. Corporate greed is absolutely not just putting workers in danger, but corporate greed is what is putting the entire country, our communities, in danger. And a couple of Iowans have heard me tell this story before, but at kind of at the height of the meatpacking plant outbreaks here, we at the state fed here in Iowa, along with the UFCW, we met with our governor, and we probably for at least a half hour, if not longer, laid out, and this was like late April of 2020. So it was just getting going. And we laid out every single possible thing that we could think of, knowing the information that we knew at the time, to help make things safer inside meatpacking plants. And not only did our governor ignore us, probably her and told Tyson and the other packers to do pretty much the opposite. And then maybe about 2 days later, flew out to Washington and asked President Trump to invoke the National Production Act to send those workers back into the plants. I can take you to a spot in a parking lot where somebody came off of their shift in Waterloo, Iowa, and collapsed and died. It doesn't need to be this way. I don't care what industry you're talking about, whether Chris, you've been doing really, really dangerous work and tough work as a pipeliner. Whether we're talking about, like I said, working in conditions and pandemics, a total disregard for the working class of this country, and it's all for just so billionaires can make more billions. So I want to say thank you to everybody on this call who is working in whatever capacity they can. You know, I'll just end with this: the legislation that was referenced. You know, when I called our national AFL-CIO to see, okay, where are we at? Do we support this or not? And they actually said, yeah, we do support it, but we think it needs to be better. There are some issues with it that we think need to be better for workers. Now, I mean, that doesn't mean that we wouldn't want to see the Stafford Act passed. Don't get me wrong, but we need to fight as hard as we can, because that Workers' Memorial Day list seems to get longer every single year on April 28th. So thank you, brothers and sisters. Appreciate it. And I'll be around.
Great, thank you. And I'm glad you're connected what's going on in East Palestine to workers in the packing plants. I mean, every industry in this country. I mean, I'm from Bay Area, Silicon Valley have toxic plants, you know, electronic plants. People are getting contaminated in these plants and in their homes, and they're not getting the protection they need. And that was supposed to be a clean industry. So it's all over this country. So thanks for joining us. And our next speaker is John Palmer. He's an International Vice President of the Teamsters from Texas, an organizer. And in Texas, as most of you know, they have had a lot of explosions and people have died. And actually, the federal government is in charge of OSHA in Texas. So the industry is in control, and people continue to die, and communities continue to be hurt. So welcome to our program, John.
Well, Steve, thank you. And to all of you, thank you for making a little time. When Steve asked me about this, I frankly, to reaffirm what you guys were talking about, you know, I'd kind of forgotten about it. And I owe everybody here an apology, because it's quite obvious that this needs to be dealt with. A little bit about the Teamsters. You know, the BLET and the Brotherhood of Maintenance Way are both merged into the Teamsters. Now, one of the structural problems with the Teamsters is the merger agreements sort of left them with their own autonomy. And we really, I mean, anyone that knew anything about the rail strike or potential for a rail strike knows that we sat on our hands and actually walked across the street. And I'm not trying to beat up Joe Biden, but Pelosi and Biden said, hey, look, you know, you guys need to take this agreement. And so they ordered them back to work, basically. Anybody that knows the RLA knows that's not, the RLA needs to be trashed. It needs to be done away with. But there's so much we need to do. Our, you know, the issues of safety and healthcare are primary on my mind. The rail industry in particular, you know, they want to go to one driver train. They've already eliminated the cabooses. These trains are miles long now. The maintenance on the tracks is substandard. One of the big issues for our rail people was they were getting like 3 days sick pay, and a lot of them were forced to stay on these trains between shifts. So their time off wasn't any time off. You know, you're basically living on a train. So there's a lot that needs to be fixed, but you know, not to. Yeah, and most of y'all have made the points. Certainly, the legislation. You know, the companies pay both sides of the political aisle. We're not getting represented, but this needs. I'm here to help however I can. Steve's asked me to write a letter to President Biden. I'm not going to ask the permission of my general president because I don't believe he'll allow it. So I'm going to do it because it needs to be done. I'm not sure that he would do it either. But it needs to be. You know, we need to speak about this issue loudly and clearly. People deserve health care, and I'm more than happy to help y'all any way I can. I stay in trouble all the time because I talk too much, and I'm not a good corporate unionist. I believe myself to be a real trade unionist, and I'm here for y'all. I don't know much. Feel free to educate me and ask me. for your help or my assistance. But thank you, Steve.
Thank you, John. And we need the hand of everyone, every worker, every trade unionist, every person, whether you're in a union or not, we need your help. And I think that's why we're having this meeting. So one of the ways I found out about Chris and what's going on is through Maximilian Alvarez. He had a live benefit for the people of East Palestine during Christmas. And we have a labor radio network, which he's a member of, I'm of about 170 radio programs around the country, podcasts. And he is fighting for getting the word out to working people about labor, working issues, union issues. And we have to build a movement, a labor media movement, and Max has been involved in that. So thanks for joining us, Max, and participating in this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Steve, for bringing us all together. Everyone here, for all the work that you've done to bring us together. It's a real honor to be here. And I am still in COVID quarantine, so apologies if I'm not at the top of my game, but I'm feeling a lot of things right now because, like all of you, this is very personal to me. I think I have a lot to say, but I'll try to kind of condense it into just a couple minutes here because I want to be gracious to everyone. First off, just to pick up on some of the things that have already been said, like Steve mentioned, I am the editor-in-chief of the Real News Network here in Baltimore. I'm also the host of the podcast Working People, and I host a labor segment on the channel Breaking Points called The Art of Class War, where I try to lift up the voices and struggles of our fellow workers, union and non-union alike. Right. And I came to the story of East Palestine a year after spending, just all my time interviewing railroad workers, right? The vast majority of whom, in fact, all of whom, were warning in some way or another that something like East Palestine was inevitable if we did not substantively address the issues that workers across the 12, 13 different unions and representing, over 100,000 workers on the freight rail system were screaming about, during the high stakes contract fight that was mentioned earlier. And lo and behold, after both parties in Congress, including, Joe Biden, like Bush did in the 90s, anyone who's in power is going to do the exact same thing. They're going to invoke the Railway Labor Act. They're going to force contracts down workers' throats. They're going to side with the industry and effectively give the industry the thumbs up to keep doing what it has been doing. And what it has been doing is destroying our supply chain by destroying the people who run it, right? And so, I was talking to those people for my show all throughout the year last year, and some in really harrowing, pointed detail were warning that the longer these trains got, the fewer people we had on those trains, the fewer people we had checking the track, the fewer people we had checking the cars, the more we were automating different essential functions, maintenance, safety, dispatchers in the dispatch office, the more that we were essentially cutting corners, cutting costs so that they could, make record profits, juice the bottom lines of executives and shareholders, right? Something was going to give. And we, our people, our neighbors, people like Chris and his neighbors, we are the ones who are paying for that corporate greed. And I want to impress upon everyone here, anyone who's going to listen to this afterwards, kind of two things that I try to impress upon people whenever I'm asked to talk about this. The first is that the catastrophic derailment of the Norfolk Southern train this time last year and the subsequent decision to, quote, do a controlled burn of 5 cars worth of toxic vinyl chloride, even when that was not the recommended action by the people who make the vinyl chloride. That whole mess is one of the greatest industrial accidents in our country's history, and a catastrophe of equal or greater proportion could literally happen again tomorrow because we have done nothing to substantively address the conditions that led to the catastrophic derailment in East Palestine, to the lack of regulation and enforcement from the government side that has given not just Norfolk Southern, but all the Class 1 freight rail carriers the license to do whatever the hell they want with our supply chain. again, the contract fight showed the government's not going to incentivize these companies to act differently. So we got to be the ones to force their hand. So that's the first thing. This could happen again tomorrow. We haven't done shit, pardon my French, to really address the root causes. The Railway Labor Act has gone nowhere, even though a number of politicians have made political hay out of it. And then when it recedes from the news, once again, it gets dropped. Meanwhile, families like the Albrights are boiling in this hell that they have been left with, that they did not ask for, that they had nothing to do with, and the country has forgotten about them. This is supposed to be the greatest country on earth, and this is what we do to our people. This is what we do to our neighbors. We abandon them. We just draw a circle around them and say, this is a sacrifice zone now. You could stay here and die and get cancer and watch your town slowly die. Or if you have enough money, you can move, but we're not going to do anything to help you. This is happening not just in East Palestine. This is happening across the country. This is happening in Flint. This is happening in Navajo Nation, where uranium mining has been giving people cancers for decades. This is happening in Red Hill in Hawaii, where people can't drink the water because the army has been poisoning it, right? This is happening here in Baltimore, near a CSX terminal that has also been declared a sacrifice zone because it's getting coal dust everywhere. Like, there's not going to be any zones left to sacrifice if we keep going down this road and not standing and fighting against the relentless onslaught of corporate greed and the destruction of all that we hold dear. Because that's what I really want to emphasize coming back to this, is that for families like the Albrights, and they're not alone, as we have already mentioned. I've been interviewing residents and families in this community, not just in East Palestine, but also want to mention how important it is for folks in the surrounding area, people in Pennsylvania. It's not like that the gas from all of that vinyl chloride just decided to stop at the Pennsylvania border, right? I mean, that has been poisoning people's land, air, water. People are feeling health effects for miles beyond the crash site. But for Norfolk Southern, if you don't live within a 1 mile radius of that crash site, you're basically on your own. And even a lot of people in that have been on their own. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. I'll shut up.
That's okay.
But this is a national outrage. Just the last thing, that we did not address the issues on the railroads that workers themselves have been warning was going to lead to a catastrophe for years, to anyone who would listen to, that we did not address those years ago, is a national tragedy. That the community of East Palestine has been so thoroughly abandoned by Norfolk Southern, by the government, by the media, and by our country is a national disgrace. An absolute national disgrace. We should, yes, be empathetic. We should care for these people, but we should be mad. We should be angry that this is happening in our country. We should be angry that we are going around telling people that we have the right to tell other countries how to run their societies when this is what we are doing to our own, right? I mean, we need to stop this. We need to actually band together and fight back. Otherwise, they're going to take everything from us and leave us in just as much of a hopeless situation as the folks of East Palestine have been left in. So I'm here to help however I can. I'm trying the best I can on the media side. But, we're an independent nonprofit outlet. Only so many people listen to us. And I really, really want to emphasize how incredible it is that out of all the national media, a strike newspaper run by striking journalists for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, who have been on strike unpaid for a year and a half, have done more coverage on this than most national media. That is insane. But also, thank you, Steve, and thank you everyone at PUP for doing that work. It's an honor to be in the struggle with you and everyone here. Thank you for having me. Sorry for talking so much.
I think we need more outrage in this country about the conditions of working people and the lives of working people and their families. I mean, that's the only, that outrage has to be combined with political activity and work, but we need the anger, and I hate what's going on. It really has to stop. So also joining us is Bob Ansbach. He's a retired member of the BNSF Railroad, which is owned by one of these billionaires, Warren Buffett, who apparently needs more money for his coffers rather than protecting the health and safety of working people and communities in his country. And he's a member of BLET IBT 391. So welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Steve. I just have a couple of quick stories on a couple of, if you will, trips on a train that I actually was on. No, it was shortly after, and I'm talking probably in the 80s. I'm going to give away my age here, but we come out of Kansas City on a UPS train, changed crews in Marceline, Missouri, and then the train continued to depart Marceline. When the rear end of the train come by the depot, we were required, because they'd just taken the cabooses off, required by the railroad, to give it a roll-by inspection. 4 cars ahead of the rear end, over half a wheel was gone. What got my attention was sparks flying and fire flying, and I stopped the train because when I looked up to the north, a westbound train was coming into town. So I was thinking, we're going to have a derailment and I'm going to watch it all happen. But that train was a 70-mile-an-hour train that went over a hotbox detector or mechanical inspection site, and the mechanical detector did not go off or warn us that there was a problem. And then the second story is, well, I'll back up a minute, because at that particular time, we were trying to save the cabooses through our UTU union's efforts in Jeff City, Missouri. I personally had a meeting with our representative of our community, and would even travel to Jeff City to testify. And he said, "Oh, you don't need to do that." I should have done that, because on the day of the vote to get this caboose bill out of subcommittee, we lost 5 votes after the lobbyist made his rounds with campaign money. So the old verbiage of money talks and BS walks, that's how we lost our cabooses. The second story is kind of similar, where we were on a vehicle train, an entire train that hauls vehicles. And there again, we had an axle that failed, 70 mile an hour again, and we drug that axle. We got a notification over the radio. We had a hot journal. We stopped the train as soon as we could and got it stopped so we didn't block the city of Carrollton, Missouri, Main Street, and 15 cars back. The bearing had already failed, and we only went 6 miles from when we heard the detector notify us until we stopped. So these derailments can happen in a split second anywhere, at any time. And if you're in between the electronic scanning devices and you have a car that fails, you don't have any warning. The train derails, separates the air hoses, you stop abruptly. But here's one instance where we drove a failed wheel across this detector with it did not sense all that heat. So there, I put no faith in the detectors. The faith was, as Charlie alluded to earlier, corporate greed. Take the weight cars, take the cabooses off the trains. No, now we got 5 people riding the engines up front. Let's take 2 brakemen and a fireman off the trains. And they're still not happy. They want to take the conductor off the train. So yeah, it's corporate greed.
Okay, thank you, Bob. And they've been reporting that there have been over 1,500 derailments in the last year after East Palestine, which tells you that in fact it's the wild, wild west, and there's no accountability of these executives.
It is, and your section crews today that work on the maintenance away, you have a truck driver and a foreman. In some cases, you might have one laborer, but that's it. That's the size of your section crews.
Okay, thank you. Now, one
You're
of the
welcome.
issues that we're addressing in this issue of healthcare is that the toxic dump sites and as Max was alluding to and others are a problem all over the country. I live in San Francisco. We have a nuclear radioactive dump site, Hunters Point Naval Shipyard and Treasure Island, where people are being contaminated they've spent over $1 billion to remediate the Hunters Point Shipyard and to build condos in it, and people are getting sick in the community, workers, whistleblowers, residents are getting cancer, and they're having to fight for health care. And the same situation is going on in Ohio, where there are many other toxic dump sites and radioactive dump sites. And joining us is Vina Colley. She's was an OCAW electrician, and she's co-founder of the National Nuclear Workers for Justice and president of the Portsmouth Piketown Residents for Environmental Safety and Security. Welcome, Vina.
Thank you for having me. We've been here for 30 some years and still not getting recognitions from our politicians. When they come to town, they have a meeting, they go on the plant site, the Portsmouth Gas and Diffusion Plant, which is a DOE, Department of Energy, and a DOD, Department of Defense site. We had OSHA and we have NIOSH, but they're not on site. And actually, they don't have NIOSH or OSHA. They just go by their rules. So it's the government watching theirself. It's the fox watching the hens. And NRC, they claim they have nuclear regulatory status, but they do not have any way to do any testing on radioactive components. Piketon has been declared #1 in the state of Ohio for cancer. Joe Mangano did 2 studies here, and he said that we are the worst site that he has seen, that he's been to in his 40 years of research. The media, we can't get the media to come here because they're so far away. We're 100 miles away from the main media, like Columbus and Cincinnati, and the local media, maybe they report stuff on every 2 days in a week now. We don't have a regular media here. Piketon, I found out that we had plutonium at Piketon, and in 1999, we broke the story that we had plutonium. And so that's when the workers' compensation bill come in of 2000. And if you have, and the government's admitted, if you have one of these 22 cancers, then you will get compensated. Piketon is an SEC site, which means a spatial exposure cohort site. We're not supposed to have to prove our exposures because they destroyed our records. They never kept records. They never tested us. And so they're not supposed to fight us if we have one of these 22 cancers and some of these toxic chemical illnesses, but they continue to fight the workers today. And this bill has been in effect since 2000. They treat us as if we're human guinea pigs. We broke every story with the company documents, and they still deny their own reports. We had a school that was shut down here off of 32, 2 miles from the plant on the west side. They shut the school down. They're building a new school for the kids, and we have 3 or 4 other schools around this community that has never been tested. I have an air monitor. I work with Dr. Ketterer, and we're taking samples, and I have an air monitor, and this air monitor has picked up uranium-236, which comes from the plant. You couldn't get that someplace else. And so I've been doing this for 35 years. There's just no end to it. The EPA are supposed to be taking split samples from the company. And what that means is the EPA does not take samples. They don't have any way to test these samples. The company gives them this paperwork, and they go by whatever the company gives them in the paperwork. They are not testing this site whatsoever. We have plutonium, neptunium, beryllium, americia. We have americia 14 miles off site in another direction where there's a high school and grade school, and these two schools have never been checked. Anne Maria, who worked for the Department of Energy in Washington, D.C., she wanted to help the community, and she went back to D.C. and they fired her. So we're all fighting a bunch of criminals. I don't know how we're going to help the people of Palestine if they don't get some type of health care. Did I say it wrong? Is it Palestina? Anyway, I don't know how they're going to get health care because the government just fights it. The railroad's not going to help them. The railroad even has workers, and we're getting ready to be a hub for nuclear waste all over the world. They're going to reprocess. They're putting in 2 power plants they announced yesterday. These 2 power plants will feed small modular reactors. And what that means is all these sites has transuranic waste sitting on their sites. And we're going to be reprocessing this transuranic site. So that's going to make us a hub for the largest nuclear waste facility in the world. And Piketon is one of the largest facilities in the world when they were processing highly enriched uranium. And the other thing that we were doing back from the 50s, we had been reprocessing reactor fuel all these years, and the workers didn't know, so we weren't suited up for it. Well, now they're coming back and they want to do the very same thing again, reprocess reactor fuel, this transuranics that's got plutonium and stuff at all these sites, and bring it in here for us to reprocess it for small modular reactors. It's really sad. I listened to all of you talk about your illnesses and the community there up here in Ohio. And I don't know how you're going to get, unless you keep the media pushing it and your people stick together. It takes numbers. It takes a lot of people to get them in Washington, D.C. to pay a lot of attention to us. It's hard for me to talk. I mean, I was a worker and I've been sick. I was a healthy worker, and like, I think it was Chris, maybe. I never had any problems whatsoever. Now I have congested heart failure, digital heart failure, chronic beryllium disease, chronic bronchitis, neuropathy, you name it, I have it now. And so I struggle every day with my health issues, and I do the best I can. And I help a lot of these workers who are having trouble to getting their claims through. But I don't know. I don't have the answer, because I know with our struggle, unless you can keep people working together and fighting, it's not going to work. Hopefully you can get these people compensated and make your representatives pay attention, keep it in the media, keep it going. And I don't know if you would be able to get any insurance or anything through the Social Security and the welfare, the SNAP program, and Medicaid or not. I know it's hard to get it because you probably still own your own home. If you own your own home, then you're not eligible for any of this stuff. And the government don't care about you.
Okay, well, thank you, Vina. And obviously, that's another issue that has been left out of the media around East Palestine, and that is Ohio. There are many toxic dump sites, many sites where people are getting sick. And this is a government site, so it's not just a private employer, it's the government itself is bringing in radioactive material and poisoning people and their families, their children, and they're not getting protected. So this is an issue for all the people of Ohio and obviously all the people of this country. So our next speaker is Carrie Duncan. She's with the Lee County Labor Chapter Vice President. She's with the IAM, International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 1010 Machinist Production Chief Shop Steward. So welcome.
It's an honor to be here with all of you today. We've started a spark that's going to lead to a fire of assistance to these people to bring awareness. Our country, our people face many battles throughout their lifetime. Our people in this country should not be facing these battles alone. It is time that people in our country and the country's leadership comes to the mutual aid for all of the people and workers of whom have been adversely affected by mass casualty, such as the East Palestine train derailment site, where residents and workers should be granted health care, full coverage, given freely by our federal government as a human right to be taken care of since this horrific tragedy 1 year ago tonight. 1 second, 1 moment, all of the residents in East Palestine, Ohio, had their lives forever changed. Our country, our people, face many battles throughout their lifetime. Our people in this country should not be facing these battles alone. It is time that people in our country and the country's leadership come to the mutual aid for all the people and the workers of whom have been adversely affected by mass casualty, such as the East Palestine residents and workers. They should be granted health care now, full coverage, given freely by our federal government. It's a human right to be taken care of since this horrific tragedy that occurred 1 year ago tonight. 1 second, 1 moment. All of the residents in East Palestine, Ohio, had their lives forever changed. And a tragedy such as this could happen elsewhere at any time along the railroad tracks across the United States of America. Corporate greed has no compassion. The workers of whom were called upon to clean up the horrendous mess were not even given the proper personal protective equipment to protect themselves from acquiring long-term health issues. This is a travesty. This is 2023 we were talking. This country's leadership needs to be taking care of its people. For we are called the United States of America. We call for them to be accountable now. Why is the leadership not hearkening to the call of distress for the residents and workers in East Palestine, Ohio? Are they a forgotten people by their elected leadership in this country? When our brothers and sisters in our country are in need of support, we rise to the call. No matter how many miles may separate us. For you see, there is no amount of distance that will lessen the compassion in our hearts, nor weaken the thoughts of hope in our minds to prevent us from reaching out and helping humankind. We are the labor movement in the United States of America, where we assist people and workers down in the valleys to rise up to the mountaintop again. It is just and right that we do so, just as our forefathers did so many years ago, to enhance the lives of residents and workers and their families in villages, towns, and cities everywhere. We ask that you take a few moments in your lives today to reflect upon what has been witnessed during these discussions, and hoping that you will pass along to others the spark that has kindled the fire in our hearts to bring awareness to our leadership in this country for the residents and workers of East Palestine, Ohio. All of us working together can achieve the impossible to become possible. That will be all of our efforts to get the EPA and President Biden to declare the area of East Palestine, Ohio, a mass casualty incident site under the Stafford Act. This would allow all residents and workers who were sickened to get health care coverage from the government. An injury to one is an injury to all. That is our motto that labor lives by. We live it and we breathe it. We're here for you. And with that being said, your people and the workers in East Palestine, Ohio, are our people. Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity and to be a part of something like has been said previously. That the brother said from Pittsburgh. It's labor's time. It's the labor's movement's time to rise like a phoenix out of the ashes. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie, for that very good speech about what we have to do. And we're going to be successful in this fight. Working people have the power. They have the power if they are organized and if they make their voices heard. And I think we can do that. So we're going to open it up for comments, discussion. And as I said before, we're asking for everybody to write a letter and send us a copy to President Biden to declare it a mass casualty incident site, to endorse the resolution, which we're circulating. And also there's a casualty incident site report found in the chat. We're going to get and organize for this conference that we're having on March the 23rd. And also we are hopefully going to have some impact when President Biden comes and make that an issue. People have to ask him, is he going to do it? And hopefully he'll get the word and he will announce it when he goes to East Palestine. If he goes and just talks without any action, that is a real problem. So another person who's joined us, a journalist who's been working decades really on the fight in San Francisco at Treasure Island, is Carol Harvey. She's a journalist, and maybe you can say a few words, Carol, about the struggle in San Francisco for the residents and workers.
Okay, I'd be glad to if I had been prepared for this. I didn't know you were going to ask me to talk. And if you can take the Carol Harvey and the initials there and try to identify with that, I'm a real person. My parents were union activists in the 40s and 50s. They fought on the lines. People that they knew died. I'm appalled by the state of unionism in this country. And when I hear you guys talk, it heartens me. I was a union activist in Michigan in the 80s, which, you know, tells you a little bit about my age. And I became a whistleblower on a major corporation. I learned a lot from that. Then I moved to San Francisco. By the way, I was helped by unions. Some of the people that helped me were WOBs. Do you remember WOBs, the IWW? These are great people. They were great people. They were really helpful. So I moved to San Francisco and I was expecting the same kind of thing. And I found that the unions in San Francisco were very weak, but by comparison. So Treasure Island is, I am an investigative reporter. I've been working on the issue on Treasure Island for 10 years, since 2014. This is not a corporate situation primarily. This is a government situation. Because the people on Treasure Island were poisoned by the Navy, which, as we all know, is part of the United States government, and they are not helping the people there at all. They have done a lot of cover-ups. We found out through the process that the EPA is hopeless. they've taken Treasure Island. The Navy has managed to take Treasure Island off the national priorities list of Superfund sites, even though Treasure Island is a Superfund site. Then talk about corporate greed. The United States government is involved. People in the government, the state government are involved, have been closely involved with the situation on Treasure Island. Nancy Pelosi is one. Gavin Newsom, who's going to run for president, is another. Dianne Feinstein, who recently died, is another. They have ties to Treasure Island. You were talking about, Vina was talking about radiation. I'm just shocked to find out that you had uranium-236 there. Treasure Island has everything: plutonium, uranium, beryllium, the things that were named by you, plus weapons-grade chemicals. The Navy set up schools on Treasure Island and used weapons-grade chemicals. People live on Treasure Island right now, and they are sick. A lot of them are very sick. I know at least 100 of them who have cancer. So my reading of this is absolutely at the nub of it is corporate greed. Absolutely agree with you about that, with everyone who said that. I think that is a key point. And just in closing, I'd like to say that I'm honored to be asked to speak. And Steve, could you explain a little bit about the Stafford Act, the Stafford Act? I didn't have time to catch up on that before I joined this. Could you talk about it?
Yeah, well, the Stafford Act was passed to provide for in emergency situations. That's one of the acts, emergency situations, to allow the government to say that in this emergency situation that they can provide health care to the people that are affected in a mass casualty incident. So that's basically one part of the Stafford Act. I'm not an expert on the Stafford Act, but I know that that has been used in the past, and we got to do some research about the history of the Stafford Act. And again, I'm not. I mean, our focus is, as far as health care, we can reform the Stafford Act, but basically we got to get rid of the insurance companies in the healthcare industry, which are about profit, making profit out of healthcare. Canada, Japan, Europe, they have national healthcare. Everybody gets healthcare. It shouldn't be where that you have to work at a job to get healthcare. If you're unemployed, you should be able to get healthcare. If you're on strike, you should be able to get healthcare. So, I mean, I think that that is a basic human right, which all working people should have. At the same time, we have to defend the people of East Palestine because they're running out of their healthcare benefits in Chris's case and others. And I think that the labor movement can make a difference because President Biden is running in Ohio. He's running around this country for election. And this can be a demand that the labor movement can take up and say, we want you to declare this a mass casualty incident site so these people get health care. Now, this is a no-brainer, you would think, for the president of the United States who's in an election year to say, yes, I'm going to do this. But we have to force him to do it. And that's what we're about today. I mean, we're about demanding that President Biden declare it a site so that these people can get health care. And that's our focus. If we're successful, that's a victory for the people of East Palestine. It's a victory for Chris and his family who are suffering. When we think about this, it's a nightmare. That's a living hell that people are going through. No health care and sick, and not wondering whether they're going to be able to take care of their families, not wondering whether their kids are going to get cancer. I mean, this is impossible for people. And this is what we have to confront. And this is why we've convened this committee. This is why we're going to be organizing to get resolutions and build a movement within labor. If we can get the AFL-CIO, all the state federations and the AFL-CIO to make that policy, to make that statement to Biden, it will become a national issue. And I think that the labor movement needs to make it a national issue for the people of East Palestine and all people in this country. So getting health care. So why don't we open it up, and if there are questions, comments, people can put their hand up or put it up on chat, or anybody would like to add. Okay, Max.
I just want to make a quick comment / appeal on that last note, Steve. You're absolutely right. In the immediate term, what we need to be pushing for is for, East Palestine to be declared a national disaster area so that the people in the area can get the healthcare that they desperately need right now and in the future as they suffer these ill health effects from the toxic exposure that they are dealing with day in, day out. But there is a larger issue here that I just want to urge everyone again here and everyone listening in the future, anyone in the labor movement, that we need to address with a full court press. And that is the issue of healthcare in this country, because it is just a a nightmare, frankly. I mean, like it is beyond comprehension that we're even having this conversation instead of just accepting that healthcare is a human right that everyone in this country should have, right? And so like this is just yet another example of why we should be fighting for this, not just for the people in East Palestine who are directly affected, but for all of our brothers and sisters and siblings around the country who don't go to the doctor because they can't afford it, who can't take their children to get regular checkups because they can't afford it, who delay necessary health care and lose years of their precious lives because they can't afford it or they don't have coverage. Like this, again, is a national disgrace. And the labor movement can and should be playing a huge role here. I think in the past, a paradigm that maybe folks were sort of locked into was that through our union healthcare is one of the biggest sells that we have to members and potential members of what we can do for them. I understand that. I do. But again, look at like the high stakes contract fights we've been having in recent years. Imagine what unions like the UAW and the Teamsters could be fighting for if they didn't have to fight for healthcare. If we didn't have to fight to maintain the healthcare that we currently have, if that was already taken care of at a national level, at a basic level, we could be pushing for more things that our members, our fellow workers desperately need. But I don't think this has been something that we have been wanting to address at that level because of what it means for our own individual contracts. But I think this example right here shows us that we need a national campaign, Medicare for all, whatever it is. We need to reclaim the language of healthcare as a human right that all working people, union or not, deserve.
I think one of the exciting things is as far as being a part of this organization, and honestly, we wouldn't be as far as we are right now if it wasn't for Steve and the information that he's brought to the table. But some of the most exciting things is the fact that as a united group, we can take this and make it happen, whether we do it, all in one lump or in parts. One thing I wanted to mention is the signing and supporting of the resolution. If we can get a lot of organizations and members to sign that resolution, it's going to open some doors of opportunities for other resources that are important to us. And it's these types of things, these discussions today, where you all were so gracious to come and spend part of your afternoon and show support, because we all know that when it comes to unions, the union members, our solidarity is what we do. And we want these folks to know that we're not going to stop the fight. We're going to work until we achieve what needs to be achieved. And I totally agree that the insurance company can make plenty of money in other ways. They can make money with cars, et cetera, et cetera. They don't need to make it this way and put people in a position where now you have insurance companies being able to buy into banks. You have insurance companies buying into the hospitals and totally controlling that, and the doctors. It needs to stop. And why don't we just make it stop right now? We can do this.
Okay.
And I wondered if you wanted to go ahead and talk about what we have planned as far as March 23rd in East Palestine.
Okay, well, we're going to be having a conference there in East Palestine And we're going to have people from the community and labor and educators and healthcare people and and culture and music. And one of the persons that is going to be coming is Mike Stout, who's here right now joining us, and he's got his hand up. Mike?
My hat goes off to all the speakers, and my hat goes off to you because I know what you're going through. We've gone through it in the Mon Valley ourselves for the last 4 or 5 decades, if not longer. And I just want you to know I agree with every freaking thing you all said. And secondly, we all know what the problem. I think we all know what the problem is, and I think we know who is causing the problem. I think what we've got to do now is take this crisis that the people, not only in East Palestine, but in other communities like them are facing, and turn that crisis into an opportunity. And that opportunity means we need to make sure that this March 23rd gathering has a strategy component, because everybody, I can't tell you, and I know I'm speaking to a lot of veterans here who have been fighting these battles for decades. There's nothing worse than when you have demands and you know what you need and you know what you want, but you don't know how to go about getting there. And the way we're going to get there is when we all put our heads together. And secondly, the way we're going to get there is power concedes nothing without militant demands. And if we go begging with our hat in our hands to Biden, all he'll do is give us a bunch of lushy promises because it's election season, and then we'll end up with nothing. We've got to go there with militant demands, and we've got the opportunity with East Palestine not only to support these people, but bring a number of movements together, the environmental movement, the labor movement, and the community movements, and the people that, and I want to add to that, there's a large healthcare movement out there. Tens of thousands of people who have been organizing and fighting for single-payer universal health care. They should be part of this fight, as well as those other constituencies. And this is our chance to call the labor movement out. And I've been part of the labor movement for 50 years of my life, including writing songs and being part of the healthcare movement and part of the Workers' Memorial. For a dozen years, I wrote songs for them in Pittsburgh. This is the time they put up or shut up. This is the time to stand up and defend workers around an issue that affects the community, affects our environment, and affects our working people. Thank you.
I just want to reinforce what Max said, and I know we're all kind of going over the same themes, but a good example of what he mentioned about healthcare is a portion, about 250,000 of our membership are Canadian Teamsters, and when they go to the bargaining table, they're not straddled with all the issues of the cost of healthcare, which anybody that's been involved in this any period of time knows is overwhelming. So I understand that. I would say the most important issue right now, try to get the Stafford Act going, but long term, I think union leaders have to do a better job of listening to their membership. I think in my union, we send out preconceived surveys. We used to actually ask people what they wanted. Now it's a multiple choice. What do you think about this, this, and that? We need to get rid of, we've become so corporate. We need to get rid of the consultant stooges that are telling us everything that we ought to do. The PR firm we use one of the biggest PR firms in the country. It's and now I'm on a different tangent, but all this back to militancy, true militancy, none of this changes until we start screaming. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. And look, I will help in any way I can. And I think I might be able to make it there on the GEB meets Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of that week. And then on the weekend, maybe there's a way for me to submit a resolution to our General Executive Board. Frankly, I don't know about those guys, but we got to make people uncomfortable. That's the only, look, when you threaten a politician's existence, they seem to care. Any other time, they don't give a rat's ass about you. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, well, a resolution in your union, a resolution of my union, all our unions. I'm in the CWA, the same thing. Our unions have the power. They have to use that power. And that's what we're saying. And for the people of East Palestine, for the people of this country. The other thing that is very important is there are many communities, Pikestown, all over this country, that are fighting for healthcare, that have been contaminated. And we've got to if we can bring all these communities together, that's power. That's power. We bring all these communities that are suffering together, and we will have a movement, because it's the same story. They've been contaminated, they've been poisoned, and they can't get health care. They have to prove liability. I mean, it's like the whole craziness of liability. You have to prove where you got sick. Hell no. If you're sick, you should have health care. Shouldn't have to prove it for an insurance company, for a system that's rotten and corrupt. I mean, that's what we're talking about, a corrupt system where it limits the liability of the billionaires so they don't have to pay the cost. Okay, Penny.
Well, I wanted to, I appreciate all that conversation, and it is really important. And, you know, because you make a nickel more than I am, and I'm negotiating against the way, you know, across the table from you, the reality is if you're honest with yourself, if there's health insurance for everybody, that means everybody's going to be in a better position to make more money and have a better livelihood. There's no doubt about it. Also, I wanted to thank Chris Albright. He's been just incredible on this committee, and I can't imagine everything that he's truly been through, but he's been very honest and shared, and has really offered to do whatever he can to do to make today's event successful. And Chris, I just wanted to thank you.
Definitely, Chris. Max?
Promise I'll be very quick. Second, Chris is awesome. The Albrights are awesome. I love them to death. It's my brother from another mother right there. So secondly, just wanted to say that yes, as the editor-in-chief of the Real News, one of the things that we're going to be trying to do is provide, the ability to stream the conference. That we're going to talk through logistics in the coming months. But we are working on that. I promise. And we would want to broadcast that on our YouTube channel, which has just about 1 million subscribers at this point. We will pass that by the time March 23rd rolls around. Also wanted to say to the group and to the organizers, one thing that I would love to do to promote this going forward is do what we've been talking about. I'm actually working on another book where I am interviewing residents of sacrifice zones. East Palestine is going to be one of them. I think it would be really powerful to talk to some of the folks on this call. Vina, I'd love to connect. I mean, like if we could expand this and show people like this is happening all over the country. These are the voices of the people who are affected. This is a fight that we all need to take up. I would love to do those kinds of interviews, put folks in these communities in touch with each other on those recordings, and we put them out as a way in the month leading up to March 23rd. I know we don't have a whole lot of time, so I would want to get working on that now, but if anyone wants to reach out to me, please do. I'll put my email in the chat. The last thing I just wanted to say, as someone who's been interviewing folks in this community, that I really want to ask the labor movement for help with, because I think the labor movement knows best how to deal with this. It breaks my heart, but one of the things that Darren Gamble, another resident, told me is he said, when this first happened, people from the outside told us they're going to try to divide your town. And they said, well, we're 4,500 people. We're a close-knit community. That's not going to happen. And it did. Norfolk Southern did divide this community for a number of reasons. Like, again, people within a 1 mile radius get help, people outside of it don't, right? Some people, because of their physiognomy, they feel the effects. Some people don't, right? So some people want to get back to normal. Other people, like Chris and Darren, I mean, like, they can't get back to normal because they are feeling it. And that is creating a lot of intense division in town that we need to also be attentive to, and we need to be aware of as we head into March, right? right? That not everyone's going to be receptive to what we're saying, right? And you know, like that's a real issue, but I think like it is a testament to how the bosses win, not just when they're trying to divide workers who are unionizing, trying to divide workers by union and non-union industry, but they are doing it here in this town, and they need help. So whatever we can do to bring the town back together is also really important. That's the last time I'll talk. I promise. You guys are great. Thank you.
I'd like to see you chime in and just verify this country is one of the only countries in the world that does not have universal health care. And that is a crime.
I think that we're going to have a very, not only successful conference, but historic conference to show that working people in this country are standing behind the people in East Palestine. And I think we have the power to force Biden to declare it a site. And that's a great victory. I mean, that's a victory for all working people. A victory for the people of East Palestine is a victory for all people in this country.
One of the goals that we had was to be able to get as many of the workers and unions and friends on that bus. So they'll ride the bus there. We'll have the event. And I believe the event's going to be from noon to 5, and then we'll ride the bus home. So folks won't have to take any extra days off or anything like that. But just wanted to throw that out there. If you're considering going, please let us know, and we'll see what we can organize to get you there.
Okay, well, want to thank you all for participating. I think we've got some tremendous information at this meeting. We have a plan, we have a strategy, and we're going to win this fight, and we're going to get health care for the people of East Palestine so that they can live a decent life, so they can at least get their health taken care of. So I want to say thank you all. Thank you, Chris, and all of you. Solidarity. We're going to continue this fight until we win. We're not going back. We're going forward in this struggle.